Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode If You Could Hide to Cola podcast. My name's Daniel. This is my brother Clive.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Daniel, we just got one section today, but it's a massive section, not in length. I mean, length, yeah, I suppose for a Book of Mormon chapter, it would be huge. But for the Doctrine Covenant, it's not that big, but there's so much in there. Like, there's one verse I spent like an hour just trying to work out. So, yeah, there's a lot to get through today. It's going to be a good one.
So, Clive, you're right. We're section 45. We've got 75 verses. The last few weeks, I felt like we've been doing 5 chapters at a time, or 5 sections at a time, as they call the Doctrine and Covenants. So, I want to start off with a quote, but not a quote this time. I wanted to give another historical story. This time, Joseph's mother is traveling with saints from Fayette, and they're traveling through the Erie Canal going to Kirtland. That's how they travel. They travel through on the canal. They're on a boat. And the captain comes and says, "We can't go any further. The ice has frozen over." And the captain has now sent someone down to look at how much ice there was. And the report back was it's like 20 foot of ice. Also in meters, maybe 6 meters, maybe 6 meters, 5 or 6 meters of ice. And he says it's going to be days or it could be weeks. And Lucy, there's a little bit of groanings. Lucy grabs everyone together and she commits an oath. She asks everyone to kneel down in prayer and she says, "As the Lord liveth, we will get through this ice." She reports that as soon as they say that, there is a noise and the ice breaks. The captain readies everyone immediately and they can pass through. The ice. But the report is that the ice, that the gap that is made in the ice is so thin that there's a little bit of damage on the vessel. Anyway, the vessel is sinking, not sinking. The vessel is sitting a little bit deeper in the water, not sinking. It's sitting deeper in the water. And an onlooker says, "There's the Mormon company. For sure that boat is going to sink. It's sitting too deep in the water. It's going to sink." And of course, then they go on their merry way. What the saints later find out is this person reported to the newspaper that the boat did sink. And they read in the newspaper that the boat they were on sunk and all the Mormons died on a sinking vessel. Of course, that never happened. Lucy then reads this newspaper or hears about this newspaper later on, and I don't know if she would have laughed it off or whatever happened. That was a funny end. But nevertheless, Lucy's faith continues to be strengthened through these kinds of experiences. And of course, she's a staunch supporter of her son all the way through. And even after his death, she speaks at conferences about experiences and how strong her testimony is in the gospel.
That's a great story. I like hearing about these little stories you just don't hear about, but there's these little miracles all through. And they're not just, ones back in Joseph Smith times. There's some even today. And we just don't hear about them enough, I don't think.
Yeah, that's right. There's all kinds of things that go on. I was in High Council a couple of months ago, and a person, one of the brethren there was telling me that they were a member of the church in Melbourne. And this is a modern day thing that you were just talking about. When the church first bought the land, part of the dam where the temple is, on the land where the temple is, was a dam of water. And the state president or someone had a revelation at the time that fill it in. And they did so, and they planted some trees on it. And years later, a temple was built on that exact site. Random stuff like that, I think, is all around. So really, really interesting. So what on earth are we talking about today?
Well, I mean, there's a lot that we're going to be talking about today. So we're talking about section 45, which this comes at a conference. And the little intro bit, it explains that there's a lot of false doctrine and false revelations floating around the church. And we need to get a true understanding. But I think this part's really great. This age of the church, many false reports and foolish stories were published and circulated to prevent people from investigating the work or embracing the faith. But to the joy of the saints, I received the following. There was so much people wanting to know what happens afterwards. What's the next stage of life? How does a plan of salvation finish? and there was a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of doctrine from other faiths creeping in, and they just wanted a blanket Joseph Smith tell us because we don't really know. And so it says, "To the joy of the saints, I received this revelation." So it's great. So then it just gets into it, like, well, this is this, and this is this, and we're going to talk about that today.
Yeah, it's a good point. If you imagine, we talked about a couple of weeks ago that the area was full of converts. They were converts from the Campbellite religion, which of course Sidney Rigdon was a preacher in. And so the saints have been members of that religion and now had changed religion to become Latter-day Saints. So they weren't sure. They'd heard from the Campbellites that the Mormons were crazy and that they believe in this and they believe in these other things and how wild and how unbelievably strange they are. And so, of course, they've got inherent beliefs already. And so people are just trying to make ends meet. They're trying to understand what they should do in the church. And some random things were popping in. People were doing things that were maybe good in their old or previous religion, but not in line with the gospel of Jesus Christ. So certainly that played a factor. The other thing that we'll talk about today, Clive, is that the saints were beginning to be persecuted significantly already. They hadn't been in Kirtland very long, but it was certainly a challenge for them. The move wasn't really, it wasn't just inconvenient, but it was for them to move to Kirtland. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was really risky as well. And one of the problems that they had was the locals thought the Mormons were going to be able to sway political parties. You can imagine there's now 100 people, then 500 and 1,000 people in Kirtland now, all believing the same thing. Well, that's enough to get someone voted in that they want to be voted in. And so we see that this happened a number of times actually, and more in Nauvoo than in Kirtland, but certainly there's examples of fights breaking out when Mormons go to vote because the people in the area know that whoever they vote they're going to get in because there's so many members now all fighting for one kind of cause. So a couple of things to kind of realize or understand before we go into this section.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about it. So I think we've talked about it before. The Lord introduces himself every single time in all of these sections. He doesn't just get into, okay, here's the revelation. It's interesting. So like he'll spend, this one specifically, I'd say 4 to 5 verses saying, "Here I am, listen to me. I am the Lord. I've been revealed. These things have been told to me by my Father, and I'm going to reveal them to you." So it's interesting, isn't it? Like it's, I don't know. I guess it's if Joseph or anybody were to prophesy to the people and didn't start with this, it's almost like, okay, where the authority is coming from because you need to say it first. Is that
Right?
Do you think that's sort of why he does it? That's how I feel like, because if someone just goes, "Hey, I've received this new revelation. God's saying it's speaking through me right now. You need to go and buy me a house." So, just something like that,
Yeah.
for an example. But the Lord's sort of showing, well, look, hearken unto me, listen unto me. The things that the Lord has spoken and God has spoken unto me. I'm the mouthpiece. That's sort of how it all starts, and then you get into the revelation.
Well, I feel like the Lord is continuing to teach. So he says here in verse 1, "Hearken, O ye people of my church," and then he teaches them, "To whom the kingdom has been given." Well, what kingdom? Well, the people of the church, you members, the kingdom is yours because you're members of the church. Oh, and so if I'm a new member, I find that quite interesting. "Hearken ye and give ear to him who laid the foundations of the earth." So he's interested in introducing himself now as the creator, the foundation of the earth, who made the heavens and all the hosts thereof, and by whom all things were made, which live and move and have a being. So a being is perhaps a reference to the spirit or the soul, perhaps. But certainly he says here, He's the creator of everything that lives and everything that moves. And then he says, and again, I say, hearken unto my voice, lest death shall overtake you in an hour when ye think not the summer shall be past. Let's come back to this. And then he says, and the harvest ended, and your souls not saved. So he says, lest death shall overtake you in an hour when ye think not the summer shall be past. He's saying, I'm going to come at a time soon, but the time is you don't know. I'm the Lord. I am the Lord who is going to return. I'm going to teach you that I'm going to return. And you should listen to my voice, because if you don't, you will receive spiritual death at that time. So I find that more interesting than Clive, than other sections we've received where there is some introduction, but there's tons of doctrine here in these verses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And and you're right. It doesn't stop there, Um, yeah, when I first read through, so I read this section twice to study for this. When the first time I read through it, I sort of separated verse 1 to 5 as the introduction, then 6 to 14 as the next section. But the second time I read through it, it was more like, like you were saying, this is like the things that the Lord is speaking to them about specifically, not just an introduction. And it even talks about how He's the light and life of the world, and light that shineth in darkness, and darkness comprehendeth it not. Like this is the glory of God. Like this is something that you could take with a grain of salt and say the glory of God is this light and life, but then you could also take it as, well, what is the light of God and what is the true glory? And then he starts talking about the other things, the everlasting covenants and things like this, and talks about Enoch and the city that's been taken up with him. There's just a lot to this beginning that you could truly study, I think, and just look at it in different ways, in particular ways, and get a different understanding of it.
Yeah. Well, I want to read verse 3, 4, and 5 and really talk about them, or a little bit more. So I'll just read them. Listen to him who is the advocate with the Father, who is pleading your case before him. So listen to him who is the advocate, the Lord Christ, the person who's speaking is the advocate with the Father. Well, what does that mean? Saying, Father, behold the sufferings and death of him who did no sin, in whom thou wast well pleased. Behold the blood of thy Son, which was shed, the blood of him who thou gavest, thyself might be glorified. Wherefore, Father, spare these, my brethren, that believe on my name, that they may come unto me and have everlasting life. The Lord here is teaching people that he is your advocate. Imagine with me, those who are listening, imagine a scene with me right now. So we've got to heaven, or we've got to the next chapter. We're being judged by Christ. We'll talk to the 12, as the scriptures tell us, and we'll talk to Christ, and he will judge us, or he will certainly meet with us and take us through a series of questions. Imagine that we are explaining to him, or he's got a huge TV screen, and you are rewatching yourself in life, all of the sins that you have committed, and you're watching them, and you're with Christ, and he's looking at them, he's looking at you, and you're embarrassed, or you're ashamed, or you're probably in tears. He's saying, I can't. He's you know that he's thinking, I can't believe that you've done these things, and you can see that sometimes you're repenting and other times you're not. And then he goes to cast down judgment, and by all of the sins that you've been watching on the TV screen, you think, well, I'm going to hell. I'm going to the lowest. I can't go anywhere else. And I can imagine, if you imagine, he now says, well, we now have to speak to the Father. And if you've ever have any recollections of being a kid, when you talk to your mum and she knows you've done something wrong, and then she says, well, now I'm going to tell your dad. Well, now you're in all sorts of trouble. And so Christ at some stage will say, well, now we need to go and see the Father. And so he will go to the Father, and you will expect to say to the Father, I'm not worthy of the celestial. I've just rewatched all of my sins in front. But before you go to talk, the Christ will say, Father, behold the sufferings and death of him who did no sin. And you ask, what do you mean? What are you doing? And Christ is saying to the Father, the sins that this person bore, the sins that this person did, well, they're on me. I'm here to represent them, but actually the crimes they committed is actually on me. I committed those crimes. Let Daniel go free. Daniel did his best. He'll say, Father, this is what Christ will say to the Father. He will put our sins on him. Father, behold the sufferings and death of him who did no sin, in whom thou wast well pleased. Behold the blood of thy Son, which was shed, the blood of him whom thou gavest of thyself. Wherefore, save these my brethren, save Daniel, save Clive, that believe on my name, that they may come unto me and have everlasting life. These verses is how we will be treated, how the Lord is saying, this is how I want to treat you. This is what I want to do for you. This is what I am doing for you. And you can put anyone's name here where it says, spare these my brethren. Whatever your name is, you put that right there. Spare this. The Lord will say, spare this person. They've believed on me. They've done enough. And because I am him who is without sin, will cover the rest. So if there's a punishment, I've done that punishment. I've already paid the price for the sins. And I can only imagine just how horrendous that scene would be. You would be, upset, joy, you would be embarrassed, or you would be just so incredibly grateful of this whole scene. And I really like that this section is teaching us and teaching people anyone who wants to read this section, the joy that Christ will bring to us, for us personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I was reading that verse, and it sounded, when you read something, sometimes you read things and you're like, well, this seems familiar. Like I was watching that movie Noah a while ago, and the way they landed on Mount Ararat, and it just seems so familiar. Like, well, this seems right. This seems like the way it must have been. And I was reading that, and I think this sounds so familiar, as in this must be that, like you explained, how the way the Lord does it. And it made me think of the old ways, how they used to sacrifice a lamb, and they used to put their sins into the lamb. They said, this is my sin. These are the sins. That was the repentant process. They put their sins into it, and then they sacrifice it like sins no more, that's gone. This is the new lamb. This is that we put the sins into it. And it's like you were saying, like how you must feel like Christ has gone, look, I'll do it so you can be glorified with the Father. And imagine being there that day going, well, thanks, but I couldn't
I
be
don't
with someone
deserve
like
this.
you. Yeah, that's just not an area that I believe I should be, no matter what it is. Someone so perfect, imagine you've done nothing bad in your life except a few things. And you go, well, even still, you've done nothing wrong. And this is what you're doing for me. So
Yeah.
tough time. That's definitely going to be a hard point. But this is the point that he's driving. This is who I am. I am the one who's given you this. This is who I am. Therefore, listen to me, because the things of the Father, it's all coming through me. This is who I am.
All right, let's keep going. What have we got in the next section?
Okay, so he talks. So he does talk about a few things, which I might just, unless you've got something particular, I was just going to skip down to verse 15 and 16. Yeah.
Yep.
So
go for it.
He explains to the people here that, well, I'll read it and we'll talk about it. Wherefore, hearken, and I will reason with you, and I will speak unto you and prophesy as unto men in the days of old. So he's talking about here of
We're in
we're
verse
basically
15.
we're in verse 15, and we're
Yep.
basically we're talking about the um the New Testament here when Christ spoke to his disciples and his apostles and those around him. And he goes on, and I will show it plainly as I showed it unto my disciples, as I stood before them in the flesh and spake unto them. And he goes into, we'll talk about it again. But this is him, this is Christ going, okay, because of everything that's happened, the things that I'm going to explain to you, I'm going to explain them so plainly as I did back then, so that we can truly understand it. And there's so many parts in this what I read and I went, I don't understand that, and I would try and look it up and I'd find different books and I'd start googling things and I'd try and get more of an understanding, because sometimes when it's written so plainly and when it's said so plainly, it seems like, really, that's it? Like, that's exactly what you're talking. Like, we'll talk about later. We'll talk about the rapture, for example. You know, when we all lifted off the earth. Like, there's some things where you go, well, I know that's not true, and then you look into it and you go, well, he does say that, and that's what he means. So the things that you're talking about here, even though there's so many religions based around the New Testament, Christ did say things quite plainly, and you do wonder why there's so much confusion out in the world. And he talks about later, which we'll talk about, how he speaks about the things, because this here is very much like the what do they call it, the olivation, oliver, anyway, it's when he talked about on the Mount of Olives, Oliverian prophecy, that's what they call it.
Olivet.
Olivet,
Olivet.
that's it. Olivet, yeah. So anyway, it talks about that. So, but this is basically the same, similar sort of vein that he's going on. So everything in here can be referred back to Matthew. Um, but yeah, and then he talks about later on, he'll say, well, I'll reveal the rest of it after you've finished translating the New Testament. But well, let's get into what he talked about. So he says here at the end of 16, halfway through that, where I've just stopped, as ye have asked of me concerning the signs of my coming in the days when I shall come in my glory in the clouds of heaven, to fulfill the promises that I have made unto your fathers. So this is what you're asking of me. You're asking me about the signs and about the coming of Christ, right? So he gets in and talks about it. Now, we've had this discussion before, and I think you might have asked a few people. I don't remember exactly, but basically, Joseph Smith is told, isn't he? Look, Christ will come, or along that vein, Christ will come if you live to your, was it like 80 something, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's in Doctrine and Covenants. Yeah.
That's in Doctrine and Covenants. So, but that didn't happen
Well, he didn't live that long.
because he didn't live exactly. So the things that Christ talks about with these particular signs, it seems like either, well, that's already happened and Christ hasn't come, or how could that happen and nobody know that Christ is going to come? Well, I see that as a similar vein of Joseph was told that he would live till he was about however old, 80 odd or something.
Well, he didn't
Was
get
it
told he
80?
was going to live to that long. He said, if you live to that long,
If,
you will
yeah,
you will see the coming of the Son of Man.
right. Which, if we look at the dates, Christ didn't come when Joseph would have been that age. So
Correct.
obviously things happen in between that change the course of history. And I'm not saying Christ isn't going to come back because the course of history is going to be changed, but I feel like the signs of the times, and it might make more sense as we get into it, but I feel like the signs of the times are something that we should understand, but also something that we don't understand because of the change of history. So let's get into it, and I'll try and make more sense of this.
Yeah, yeah. Because I feel like the sign of the times. I feel like members get caught signs of the time watching sometimes, like plane spotting, signs of the time spotting, and almost some members might have just this long list that I can imagine they've got on their fridge, and they're like, "Oh, those 3 things happened today. Tick them off. I've only got 85 more things to go, and then Christ is coming."
Yeah.
Where in reality, the time no man knoweth, and the Lord will come in when He wants to.
I remember being in an elders quorum lesson once, and the teacher said, Christ's doing stretches now, so let's all prepare, It's like, okay, well, how long?
Because it's doing stretches.
Yeah, in preparation. So there's a few things that I want to talk about here. I mean, and there's a lot to it. So jump in whenever you feel like it's right, Daniel. And I'm
Yep.
going to just skip a little bit again, just to get to my point here. I just want to talk about, even though I got so much highlighted here, and I've really prepared for this lesson. I sort of went, well, I've got to take out that so I can talk about that. I got to take out that so we can talk about that. So, I want to talk about verse 24 and 25. He says, "And this I have told you concerning Jerusalem. And when that day shall come, shall a remnant be scattered among the nations, and they shall be gathered again, and shall remain until the times the Gentiles be fulfilled." So we're talking about here about the tribes. So the tribes were lost in a few times over the years, over the many, many years. There was that like 700 and something. There was like this great calamity, and they were scattered, and then they were scattered again. They've been scattered over the course of many times. So he's talking about here the coming back together and the gathering, right? Now, what's interesting is he says, "But they shall remain until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled." So
What are the
does
times
that?
of the Gentiles?
Well, it's exactly right. So this period is the era when the gospel is preached primarily to the non-Jewish nations. So basically, this began at the restoration. So he's talking about here that this is the start of it. So the
Right.
restoration truly is a start. So this truly is the opening of the seventh seal, this restoration,
And
because it's
that's been represented in the gospel being preached to anyone who isn't Jewish. And of course, on the American continent at the time, there would have been almost many at all.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. This is the time of the Gentiles, basically. It's
Right.
time for us. And this is how it all starts. The restoration is like a gate opening in preparing for all of this to happen. And that's, I want to go back to verse 26, but that sort of matches up with verse 28. He says, when the times of the Gentiles has come in the light, when the times of the Gentiles has come, a light shall break forth among them, among them that sit in darkness, and it shall be in the fullness of my gospel. But they receive it not, for they perceive not the light, and they turn their hearts from me because of the perceptions of men. So this is, you mentioned the first vision that Joseph Smith had. This is the light breaking through. This is Joseph Smith preaching. This is those men turning their hearts away from it. This is the beginning of that.
So would you say, in terms of if I'm a signs watcher, um, I've just taken up a national hobby of signs watching. Um, this is this is pretty locked in, right? This isn't like um oh, I'm interpreting it as this sign because I want to tick it off my signs bingo card. Like the sign, the time is that the gospel will go to the Gentiles, and truly that started when Joseph Smith brought forth the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But you're talking about sign watching. There's a huge difference between people who watch for a sign and people who can tell a sign. Like, oh, this is a sign. This is a sign of the second coming, compared to, oh, that happened, therefore, like you said, let's tick it off. I've got a list of 100 signs.
Mm.
Boom, earthquake.
Bingo, Lord's
Boom.
coming tomorrow. Now
That's
my
right. Yeah.
bingo card.
Which, it happens. Jehovah's
No,
Witnesses believe that Christ came back in the 80s, and that this is like a spiritual second coming.
I don't want to go too far ahead, but what about verse 31? And what's your far more skilled and knowledgeable on these things than I am? What about this verse 31 and the brother that said that verse 31 or a theory, I'm not going to put words into anyone's, but a theory was that this could be related to COVID. And there shall be men standing in that generation that shall not pass until they see an overflowing scourge, for a desolating sickness shall cover the land. What's your highly unqualified, highly our own podcast? What do you is that nonsense? Is that what do you think about that?
This is the verse I was talking about where I was stuck on it for an hour
Oh,
because I was trying to understand. So look, the plague in England. Remember that?
Well, I don't, because I'm
You
not
don't remember that.
400.
Many people died. Genghis Khan, he killed so many people that the world got a lot healthier because the oxygen levels started to rise. The so many people died that air became cleaner because there was so many less people. Right?
Right.
You look at COVID and you go, yes, it affected the whole world, but Joe next door doesn't believe COVID was real, and he thinks it was a government conspiracy because it
Right.
didn't affect him. So, and it didn't affect. Look, it didn't affect me very much. It affected my work, but personally, I don't know anybody who died from COVID. I know a lot of people that got sick from COVID. I know the hospitals were full,
Mhm.
but
But you
is
also believe it
this
happened, and you
Oh,
also believe that
100%.
people
Of
did die.
course. Yeah, just put that on that. Definitely believe COVID was a real thing. But, you know, is this scourge, is this something that's going to be much, much worse? Like, look at the disaster in Haiti, right? You remember that 2010, there was an earthquake. Did that affect you very much personally?
No, not at all.
No.
0.
But 300 plus thousand died.
Oh,
300,000 plus
see, I
died.
wouldn't have even known that.
Exactly. So those people at that time, this for them would have been the earthquake that shook the world, the earthquake, the final earthquake to bring Christ, because it was such a huge disaster. You know, and you speak to people that was in New York at the time of September 11, they'll tell you that was it. You speak to the people in Bali at the time of the Bali bombings, they'll tell you it was it. So the question really is, if you're a sign seeker and you want to tick this off, you'd probably say COVID actually took over the whole world and scourged the whole world. So yes, that was probably it. But in reality, we're still okay, and that sort of happened 5 years ago now. So is it? Is it that
Right.
event that took over the world, or is there something worse coming?
So maybe are we looking at this? That it's possible that we're looking at this completely wrong. Actually, that we're looking for one sickness in one time. Um, but maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, and that's the thing as well. How much worse can the world get? Because everyone that talks about the last day, we talk about how much worse the world is going to get.
Right.
How much worse would the Lord let the world get before he goes, all right, I'm back? Like if your kids are having a tough day, you're not going to go, well, when it gets worse, I'll go help them. When they can't bear it anymore, then I'm going to go help. That's just not the case. You will go, it's tough for you. I want to help you right now. So so we always say that life's going to be way worse. Life's going to be, but is it? Life seems pretty difficult now. Is this the hardest it's going to get? Or are we, as the elect, is the Lord just going to forget about us? Well, the elect are just going to have a tough time, and they're too bad. They've just got to deal with it. At what point does the Lord go, that's enough? Is this the last days because it is difficult? Or is it really going to get more difficult for us? Or are the elect going to be okay? And the Lord's sort of more like, I've got to prepare different parts of the world. So yes, it's going to get worse, but hey, you and your neighbor Joe, who didn't believe in COVID, you guys are going to be okay anyway, because it's other things that I've got to sort out.
I think maybe that last point, or one of the things you said there is probably something that struck a bit more relevance with me. Like, the Lord needs to continue. Like, bad things will continue to happen, and for sure, our kids, their kids are going to have it way worse. Like our grandkids, have mercy. Our grandkids will have it worse. But at the same time, they'll have a temple closer to them than we do now, because we're getting a temple in South Brisbane. So maybe their worldly life will get worse, but there's an opportunity for their spiritual life to be better than our spiritual life, because it takes us so long to get to Brisbane. And when the South Brisbane temple comes, temple will be much closer and we should be able to go more often. So is it more like that? Like, yeah, the world's going to continue to tick over, but I'm going to continue, or I'm going to try to give people more opportunities to be more spiritual with more temples coming. Because right now, if you live in Coffs Harbour, no matter what, your temple is 8 hours away.
Yeah.
Is it something more like that?
Yeah, and that's the difficulty of it, and that's the difficulty of sign watching, because there's
Yeah,
so
true.
many. Could it be this? Could it be that? Every single person who's come back from a mission had the hardest mission. Like my mission was really hard. Yeah, I know my mission was really hard too. Like everyone was hard. We were talking to our kids actually today. No, sorry, yesterday. My mother-in-law's birthday, and we were talking about how old she was, just to be funny with the kids, and talking about how back in her day, teachers could smack kids. Now, like, oh, that sounds horrible. What a horrible situation. I'm thinking, yeah, but nowadays you got cyberbullying and things like that. Must be harder for you these days. So
Yeah,
every new generation, everything's harder, but
right,
is it really harder when you're in the situation? But then it throws a complete spanner in the works when we keep reading on. So if we just
right.
jump
Okay,
quickly,
let's
we
go.
can go back, but if we can jump quickly to verse 37 and 38,
Yep.
says, so this is talking about sign seeking. Ye look and behold the fig trees, and ye see them with your eyes, and ye say, when they begin to shoot forth, and their leaves are yet tender, that summer is now nigh at hand. Right? Makes sense.
Yeah,
We had a fig tree once. You're right. That's
it's
exactly what it is.
delicious. Yep.
Even so, it shall be in that day when they shall see all these things, then shall they know that the hour is nigh. So it's just throwing a complete spanner in what we were just talking about, because the Lord's saying there, well, actually, when you see these things, you will know. Just like when the fig tree springs its leaves, you know it's summer. Well, you'll know when you see this thing happen, you'll know that that's definitely a sign. So what we were just talking about just then, was that a sign? Was that not a sign? Is that saying that it's definitely not a sign because we're unsure, or is it we just don't know, and we're not arborists, or so we don't know? Is it arborists? Plants? Um,
No, botanists, I think.
botanists. Okay, we're not botanists, so we
Arborists are the
don't
ones that cut trees down.
cut trees down. Yeah, of course. So we're not botanists, so we might not know that that's what a fig tree means. Is it the same way with, well, we're not looking enough, or we haven't studied enough to know that that's what the signs of the time means? Or is it that we should just know? And so if we're unsure, it probably isn't a sign.
Yeah, I guess that's probably pays to pay more attention at General Conference. Like, what is it in 2019? President Nelson says, eat your vitamins. Like next year's going to be crazy. Um, is it more like if we were watching conference and we were more astute with the brethren, that we would be aware they are subtly telling us that signs are happening? Well, so I guess what I mean by all of that is it's not our jam to tick off the bingo card of signs, because that's not our duty. It's the duty of the brethren to do that and tell us and keep us up to speed, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And that's exactly what I basically wrote down here is follow the prophet. Remember when they changed from 2 hours, so from 3 hour church to 2 hour church, and really focused on home learning. And then COVID hit, and we had to do church from home basically.
Yeah.
And it was all preparing us for that. We didn't know that, but that's what it was preparing us for. And so you're right. So if we really study General Conference, are they trying to tell us something without, because the prophet's never going to go out there and go, okay, get ready, Australia, there's going to be a bushfire. I want you to get your 72-hour kits ready, or anything like that. But he's not going to be specific, or just say to the world flat out, Christ is coming at 3 o'clock on this day, so prepare.
And that's it's a slothful servant who needs.
That's exactly right. A slothful servant. We just need to study and understand, because how lazy are we to go, you have to tell me exactly what I need to do? And yeah, I'll definitely promise to do it. Well, really? Is that how we do things?
Interesting point.
Okay, Daniel, I'm just going to flip around again, if you
Okay.
don't mind. I'm just going to jump to verse 42 here. And now, verse 42, we've talked a bit about, or Christ talked a bit about the last days here, and the vapors of smoke and the fires and things like that. And he says, and before the day of the Lord shall come, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon be turned unto blood, and the stars fall from the heavens. Now, again, I'm going to ask you, do you think, because I don't know, so I've written actually here, ask Daniel.
Oh, no, no. Well, now we are in trouble.
if like, let's say, okay, tomorrow the sun comes up, then suddenly it goes dark, and then we see the moon behind us because they're up at the same time, and it's blood. We know, hey, Christ's on his way. Let's go
Yeah,
prepare.
yeah.
So, do you think this is a literal? This will happen. Like this will happen sometime, or this is actually going to happen immediately before Christ comes? Because this it will is like, is it going to be, oh look, that happened, and now in 10 years time Christ probably going to come? Or because this is such a physical sign, more than just there might be a, or there will be a plague that takes over the world. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but this is actual. Yes, it will. The sun will go dark, the moon will turn into blood. Do you think that this will be like an immediate thing?
So my answer is, do I think this it's a literal sign? I think my answer is yes. I don't obviously I'm not the brethren, but my answer is that I do think it's a literal sign. But if we think about the Book of Mormon, when Christ was born, the Book of Mormon records that they experienced sunlight for 3 days. But to them, that was just to the believers, it was the sign. But to the non believers, it was just an anomaly because it's not till 30 years later that Christ would come, that Christ came. And so all those believers were like, well, the sign was 30 years ago. Like, he's got to come at some stage. The sign has happened. And so is it something like, literal? Yes, but the timing can be all over the place because of the evidence we read in the Book of Mormon. Is my point. They don't know that the believers think Christ has been born because they've read the works in the scrolls to say there's going to be a son born, and the world's going to not be dark for 3 days. So they experience that and they link it and they go, well, that makes sense because of what I've read. But all the people who haven't read it just go, this is a really weird thing that's just happened. I don't understand why it's not dark. But also, nothing changed for 10 years. So it must have just been something random in the universe.
So, and this is just going to be your own personal opinion. Um, how, like, if the world's supposed to understand this, like you're talking about what happened in the Book of Mormon just then. What about the rest of the world? How is the rest of the world? Like, if the sun were to be darkened, well, if it's dark in Australia, it's normally light in America. If it's light in America, it's dark in Australia. Do you think this is going to be something because, like, is it because we have TV that everyone will be able to see, hey, the sun darkened on a bright day? Or do you think this is something that needs to be shown physically to the whole world? It needs to darken in America. Then the sun needs to come up in Australia and then it needs to darken over there too.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. My assumption will be that Christ will come down in glory and everyone will know. And so if everyone needs to know, it means something crazy has to happen so that it catches every single person's attention, not just to my kids that spend all day, every day scrolling reels on YouTube or whatever on earth it is. Like it's got to be so full on that every single person on earth knows it's happening. Um, so that's probably my own thoughts on it. But yeah, it needs to be light literally everywhere. And it needs to be so brazen it's reported everywhere. And someone in the back streets of nowhere, the furthest bush, is aware that it's happened. So it's got to be a huge event.
Yeah, all right, that's fair enough to say. Because I have mentioned before, so I didn't get the reference because I think I've mentioned it a few times. Because Christ will come, first of all, to his prophets and apostles, and then he'll visit the nearly vanquished sons of Judah and tell them that he is Christ before he shows himself to the world. So you're right. So that he'll come like a thief in the night, and then he'll come in this power and great glory, which is what it talks about in the next bit in verse 45. So yeah, the whole world will need to know you're right. And I just thought maybe you'd found something that I didn't. So 45. But before the arm of the Lord shall fall, the angel shall sound his trump, and the saints that have slept shall come forth to meet him in the cloud. This is what I was talking about earlier. So I've the amount of times that I've read that we will go up and meet Christ in the cloud, I've thought, well, that how I don't think that doesn't sound right. That we will physically come off the earth and go up into the clouds with Christ. But everything that I've read says that that is true. Every church piece of doctrine that I've read says that that will be true. We will physically be lifted up off the earth to meet Christ. The earth will be cleansed and then we'll be put back down. So that was something I couldn't comprehend because it just doesn't seem like everything to me that Christ has come. There'll be earthquakes, there'll be fires. Everything seems like it can be scientifically explained because, Christ does everything like that. And then you go, well, he changed water into wine and that can't be explained. But everything else can be explained. The plagues can be explained. Parting the Red Sea can all be explained. But there's some little bits that just can't. So to me, the fact that this isn't like a scientific explanation of what will happen, it will just be the fact that we all come off the earth. It was harder for me to comprehend and understand that. But everything that I've read says that this will actually, and Christ said, like we talked about at the beginning, that he's telling everyone this in plain ways for us all to understand. And he actually says this. So this must be the case.
Really interesting.
Okay, Daniel. I've talked a lot. I just want to get into a couple of really interesting points here.
Okay.
Verse 48, right? Do you want to read verse 48 and we'll talk about that?
Sure. And then shall the Lord set his foot upon this mount, and it shall cleave in twain, and the earth shall tremble and reel to and fro, and the heavens also shall shake.
Right. So this mount that he's talking about is the Mount of Olives, right? And why the Mount of Olives? Why is it that will break in twain, in half? Any thoughts? I mean, I've got the answer. I don't want to try and trick you on anything.
Spoiler alert me.
The Mount of Olives is an ancient Jewish cemetery. So the fact that Christ is splitting it in half is symbolizing that this is over. There's no more of this. This is
no
me.
more death.
No more death. This is me confirming that. And the Mount of Olives, he's been there many times. He's talking on the Mount of Olives right now. Not right in for these guys, but when he's talking about it in the New Testament. So this is what he's he's breaking it in half to symbolize no more death. I just thought that was absolutely spectacular. The way that he would symbolize that to come down to the earth. Ancient Jewish cemetery, very big one too, like one of the biggest. So absolutely incredible. Christ will reign again. When Christ comes back, he will reign. And interesting doctrine, especially to the early saints, right? And verse 55, and Satan shall be bound, that he shall have no place in the hearts of the children of men. Absolutely incredible when Christ comes back. So verse 58, Daniel, I'm going to talk here. So Satan will be bound at 56, verse 58, and the earth shall be given unto them for their inheritance. This is the righteous. And they shall multiply and wax strong, and their children shall grow up without sin unto salvation. Yeah. When Christ comes back again, children will still be born. This is a plain doctrine that we know, but imagine the saints understanding this. Children will be born, and there'll be no Satan and none of his followers to try and influence us. Yes, there will be our own decisions, our own choices, as there always has been, but there won't be this niggling, devil on your shoulder saying, well, do this instead, do that. How incredible would that time be?
I mean, what did those spirits that are going to be born in that time, what did they do in the premortal life to get such an experience? They must be the greatest of souls, no?
They must be. I mean, what didn't we do to get that opportunity? Okay,
well, some awesome thoughts, some great conversations tonight. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you could hide to Kolob podcast. We love chatting about the doctrine and what a great Section 45 is. Catch us on Facebook, catch us on YouTube, subscribe to us there, and catch us on Instagram. We'll see you next week. We've got Section 46, 47, and 48. Thanks for listening. See you next week.